Everyone, and welcome back to the episode about Europe. I hope you just listened to part 1 and you're just right back for part 2, ready to go. It actually worked out that I switched my order of posting today or this week, because now there can just be back to back. And there's not this awkward episode in the middle. So, no AC in most places. Yeah, it was obnoxious trying to just sleep because it was loud and it was hot and it was stuffy. And it wasn't fun. I did not enjoy it. The very first night, I remember my roommate left the windows open, and she said, well, I really hope we don't come back and find birds in our room, because there were pigeons everywhere. And I was like, oh my gosh, good point. Didn't even think about that. So I'm glad that no birds came into our room, but it was obnoxious trying to go to sleep with people that were drunk outside, just having a grand old time and singing and laughing, and I don't even know. It was hard sometimes. Okay, and then the next thing I noticed was that there were green and red crossing signs. So when you crossed on the crosswalk, instead of a white walking person, or a red hand saying don't walk, or a white little mannequin thingy guy saying walk, there was a green walk guy and then a red guy standing still. So that was definitely different and interesting. In London specifically, I noticed that some of the walking guys had different shapes. Some of them looked like they had the hat on and they were like walking. Some of them looked more curvy than others, and it was just very interesting that they would add those little details in there. So I enjoyed the little details, I did, but it was definitely interesting to notice, and that was probably one of the first things I noticed actually, because it was just so different. A green walking guy and a red walking guy rather than just a white little walking guy or a red hand. And both make sense. I mean, green and red go and stop, but I am used to the American way, and so the other way was just new. It was new. Biking's popularity, there were bike lanes everywhere. Everywhere. And you had to be really careful that you were not walking in a bike lane, because people riding bikes would get really mad at you if you were walking in their lane, which I understand that. Or they would just run into you, because why not? I feel like I didn't notice them as much in Prague, but I noticed them a ton in Vienna, and I noticed them in Munich, and I noticed them in Paris, and I definitely 1,008,000,000% noticed them in London. London and Paris specifically were the places you could bike somewhere faster than you could get there by car. In Vienna, we weren't super aware yet of the biking lanes everywhere. And so a big group of us were walking in the bike lane, and one girl noticed that she was in the bike lane and moved over into the pedestrian lane or whatever, and there was this biker zooming by super fast, and he saw all of us in the biking lane, and so he went into the pedestrian lane or the walking lane, and he most genuinely, literally, actually ran into that student. She got hit, and luckily he had slowed down and was trying to brake, and then he started yelling, and we didn't understand what he was yelling, and he didn't yell at her, he was yelling at us, and he was pointing at the big painted bike on the bike lane and pointing to the walk on the other lane and was yelling at us. And then there was this other lady that was walking in the walking lane and almost got hit. She didn't, but she almost did. And then she was yelling at him, and it was just this whole thing. And we felt awful, especially because the one person who decided to walk in the walking lane was the one who got hit, none of us in the biking lane. But since then, a lot of us, and there were only like 6 or 7 of us that were there at that point in time, because we had a lot of free time to just do whatever stuff without the big group. But since then, I think a lot of us tried really hard to focus on where the bike lanes were and to make sure not to be in them. A lot of us checked to make sure we weren't in the bike lanes, or to get out of them if we were in the bike lanes, because if we were in them, we knew that people would get mad and frustrated and we could be possibly hit. So that was one thing that I really tried hard to stay out of since Vienna. And it was Vienna that kind of woke me up to that. In London, it was so interesting because there were lights for bikers. Not even kidding you. There were lights. Like, it would have a green bike light, and that means to go, right? Or there'd be a red bike, and I saw multiple times bikers just sitting in their little lane off their bike, ready to pedal, but not yet, or even standing to the side of their bike when it was red for pedestrians to cross or for cars to pass or whatever, and it was so strange. I mean, it was just weird. You have lights for biking? Normally in the United States, there's the bike lanes along the streets, right? And they just stop at a red light like everyone else. Well, bike lanes there were their own very specific thing. They weren't connected to roads a lot of the time. They were mostly on sidewalks or they'd be next to a road. I'm sure I'm not making sense unless you've seen it, but it was just different and it was very interesting. And I thought it was worth mentioning that there were lights for bikers. Very interesting. Very cool. Okay, every single place except for Paris and I think London, well, specifically Paris had bigger elevators, but every other place, Prague, Vienna, Munich, the elevators were so tiny, so dang tiny. I mean, it was so frustrating. You could fit probably 2 people in with their suitcases, or 3 people without suitcases, and it was squished. The maximum was like 4 or 5 persons, and you're like, okay, maybe if we were all arm to arm, leg to leg, squished in here, but you could not even comfortably, like it was pretty uncomfortable to be with 2 other people, and even by yourself, it was just small. They were just very small elevators, and I am definitely not used to that being in the States. I feel like most elevators here are very big, or they're at least big enough to fit a family or 4 or 5 people comfortably, and they were very small, which was frustrating and difficult. Another thing is when you are there at a restaurant or at some place where you're eating or getting a drink or whatever, they don't come up to you and ask, would you like the check? You have to go up and ask to pay. Since tipping is not really a huge thing there, in fact, in some places it's discouraged because it's rude. I mean, I don't know if any of the places we went it was rude, but there are some places in the world that tipping is very rude to them. Because it's like, you don't think my time or the money I get paid is worthy of the service I gave you? It's just very strange. It's very strange. It's kind of like my grandma was telling me about how there were some people who visited from India when they had babies in America, and as a nurse, you don't get tipped, right? You don't have a baby and then give your nurse a $20 bill, like, thanks for taking care of me, that's not really something you do. Maybe a gift or something, but you don't really tip nurses here. My grandma said that they would find $20 bills, like, in the sheets or under pillows or something like that, and that was weird for her, right? Well, there, it's kind of weird to tip. So that goes to say that you have to ask to pay, and honestly, you could probably sit at a table for most of the day, at least a couple hours. You could just sit there, and no one would come over to ask you if you wanted to leave or anything. They would just let you sit there. Every once in a while, they'd come around to see if you wanted more drinks or anything else, but they didn't really wait on you or serve you. Like, they'd bring you your food, and they'd take your order, but they wouldn't come back very often, because none of the drinks get refills. You have to buy each drink separately. There's no refills. You don't get free water to just fill up. So you just had to buy everything individually. And that was rough for me. That was very rough because I love to drink water and fluids and liquids. And I feel like most of the trip I was so dehydrated. So dehydrated. And even at mini markets and supermarkets, I ended up buying water there and then drinking it back at the hotel. Because at restaurants, you could not depend on that to get you full or to slake your thirst. Ooh, I just used the word of the day. It's totally not time for the word of the day, so I'm not trying to wrap it up. But I do want to put the little word of the day in here because I thought it was so perfect. I was going through my words, and because like I said, I have a huge list, and I found this word, and I genuinely could not have been more happy with it. So really quick, the word is slake, and it's a verb, and it means to quench, satisfy, take the edge off, satiate, relieve, gratify. And the example is slake your thirst. So I was so thirsty all the time, and you could not count on restaurants to slake your thirst, to quench your thirst, to satisfy your thirst. If you were thirsty, going someplace to eat was not going to help you out. You know, you had to go buy water at a mini market or a supermarket, at least in my case, because I feel like the water that I got at the restaurant would just be enough to eat with my food, you know, and then I'd still be so thirsty. I don't know, it's just hard to explain. I'm a water snob if anyone doesn't know, and I'm sure I'll tell stories about that later, but I didn't care. Any water that was put in front of me, I drank. I mean, I didn't care what it tasted like sometimes. First of all, I did have little packets of flavoring that I put in my water at some points, but at a restaurant or something when I ordered water, I just drank it. I drank it all. Didn't care what it tasted like. I didn't love it, obviously, but I was so thirsty. I ended up, while ordering, looking for the drink with the most amount of ounces or milliliters or whatever, and I would get that one. I would get that one every time. And there was one time we were at a restaurant, and I ordered the water, and he asked if I wanted the big one or the little one, and I said the big one, obviously. And then 2 more people ordered water, and I don't think he understood. I mean, he obviously didn't, because he brought out a water, and there they open up a glass water bottle, basically. They open up a water for you. They don't have like a tap or anything. So he opens up this glass water bottle, and I think it's half a liter, and then he pours everyone some water. And he even asked the people who didn't order water if they want some water. And I'm not trying to be rude, okay? I'm really not. But at that time, I was so thirsty, and I was like, hold up. Did I just order a water, a big one, nevertheless, and then everyone got some water, and now I'm paying for the water? And that sounds like that sounds kind of bad, kind of, sort of. But I was so confused and so thirsty, and so I drank my water, but then I felt weird pouring some of the water from, like, there was some left into my cup, because it seemed like it was for everyone, but then I'm the one who ordered it, so I was like, hold up. At first I was like, so is he charging us for 20 euros, so euro is $1.10, so however many euros, it's going to be more dollars, so it was for 20 euros, and I was thinking, so our little tiny cups of water that he just poured us from that thing, is he charging all of us $4.20? And I think I said that, and they were like, no, that bottle's worth $4.20. And I was like, oh, that bottle. And so I was like, so I'm just a little confused here, then who's paying for it? And they were like, oh, I mean, I can pay for it. I'm like, well, I mean, I ordered it, I can pay for it. I didn't want to be rude and be like, oh, thanks for paying for it, because when people do that, it annoys me. So I was like, no, I mean, I ordered it, I can pay for it, but I'm just confused. And obviously that guy was confused as well, because he just brought out one water when 3 of us ordered one. So, I don't know. I was just thirsty. I was a little bit sad and disappointed. But what are you going to do? Seriously, what are you going to do? And it was weird. I don't know. And then over there, ice is very rare. They rarely have ice for their drinks. And the few rare places that did have ice, I knew several people that were like, can I just have more ice? Or, whatever. But yeah, it was not common for them to put ice in your drinks. In fact, sometimes you could ask for it, but a lot of times they just didn't have ice. So that was very interesting. In fact, when we came back, I was with my roommate and my friend, and we went to a crappy gas station. We were back in the States, and she bought a cup of ice, and then she asked me to record her for her TikTok, and then did a little dance, and I was like, what is happening? But, TikTok is TikTok, so there you go. But she did a little dance, and then she poured the ice on her head. And I was like, what are you doing? And she's like, I can do that here, because we can just have ice here. Ice is here. I'm back. Ice is back. And I was like, I guess it is. So that was something that was pretty funny for me. And I mean, I totally agree. I missed ice. I missed it. I missed it for sure. And drinks were cold, but sometimes they weren't. Most times I feel like they were refrigerated or something and they were colder, but there's just something special about chewing on ice or having your drinks be cold because it's like fresh and the ice is fresh or whatever. I don't know. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah, so I missed ice for sure, and I missed water, and I was a very dehydrated girl. So like I said, you had to pay for water. And then another thing that was interesting is sparkling water or soda water is very popular there. Very popular. In fact, every single place I was at, you had to clarify if you wanted still water, and that's just water. And then sparkling water was water, sometimes they joked, water with gas. They joked about that a few times, water with gas. But, I mean, people in my students and professors joked about water with gas because someone had said something about that. So, yeah, but sparkling water was very, very popular, and you had to make sure when you were buying water that it was still water, or you'd buy sparkling water. And I just want to say, I drank anything to survive, but sparkling water or soda water when it is warm, I can't do it. I cannot do it. If it's cold, I can survive. I can do it. I won't like it. I won't like it at all, but I can do it. But water that is full of gas or carbonated or whatever, that's sparkling water, when it is warm, I cannot drink it. In fact, it makes me want to gag right now. I felt like I was going to puke, and so I couldn't do it. I wouldn't drink sparkling water that was warm. That only happened twice, but I just couldn't do it. Okay, the next thing, it looks like I'm starting to finish, so that's good. The last thing I want to talk about is the Amazon Fresh. So I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Amazon Fresh, but I mean, I'm sure you've heard of Amazon. You order things, it gets delivered to your house, Amazon Prime, all that fun stuff, right? Everyone and their mom and their dog and their aunt's best friend has Amazon, right? Most people do, at least. Well, they had little stores, and, I mean, okay, let me edit this. Only in London did they have this that I specifically knew and went to. But I've heard that it's common in Europe, especially in the United Kingdom. So there's a little store, and it's called Amazon Fresh, right? And so you go, and you log into your Amazon account, but you have to be on the United Kingdom version, not the United States version. So you go on the United Kingdom version, you just switch versions or whatever online, and then you search in the little search bar, fresh code, and then a QR code pops up. And then you scan it at the beginning, you scan it, and then you go in and shop, and you grab what you need, and you put it in a little bag. It's like a brown bag. Or you can pay €1 or £1 in that case for a green bag, which was nicer and I think plastic. And then the brown bag was just a paper bag. And so you go on and you shop and you grab what you need. And then guess what? You just leave. You just leave. So at the very beginning you scan your QR code, you grab what you need, and then you leave. And at first when I'm leaving, I'm like, so where do I check out? And he's like, you don't. You're good to just go. And I'm like, wait, but how? And he's like, well, there are cameras and motion activators and sensors and all this stuff, so we do it all that way. And I was like, what? Seriously? And he was like, yeah. And so I left, and I was like, well, what if they add things to my cart that I didn't buy? Like, at first I found water, and I started putting it in my bags. I genuinely put like 4 of them in my bag. And then I realized that the bigger water was cheaper by ounce, and so then I took out a few of them and put bigger ones in, still kept some of the little, but took some of the littles out. And I was like, how could they know what I put in and what I took out? Because I feel like I was kind of messy about it. Well, I get back to the hotel, and I'm still shocked about this thing. It was just so random and kind of amazing, honestly. I don't think it would work in America because it's too busy here. I think it'd just be too busy, because it wasn't very busy or crowded there. There was probably like 3 people in this little store. And I got an email from Amazon and checked my email, and it had my receipt broken down into each item that I bought. And it was right. It knew exactly what I bought, even though I had moved items around, and I had looked at some items and thought, do I really need this? And put it back, and it got them all right. I was very impressed. So, Amazon Fresh, I actually recommend. If you live in the United Kingdom and you want to go to Amazon Fresh, I recommend. I think it's a very cool experience. And I love that you can just grab what you need and then leave. I kind of felt like I was stealing, but I wasn't. So, I don't know. Okay, so here's the deal. I have a quote, and I'm going to share this quote. And then there's going to be another podcast episode where I talk about this program or this class. But it's not going to be about the things that I noticed or just little stories or whatever. I mean, it might be. But I am going to talk about my life-changing experience in the very last museum that we visited. So stay tuned for that because I am going to do that and I'm excited for that. But for now, here's the quote of the day. To be at home is to be known. It is to be loved for who you are. It is to share a sense of common ground, common interests, pursuits, and values with others who truly care about you. And that's by Dr. Vivek Murthy. And he's the one who wrote the book about loneliness. And I think the book's called Together. I'll need to go into details about what that book's about at some point, or what that book's called, but I forgot right now. But I have a ton of different quotes from him because he's just so good, and the book's so good. And I haven't even finished the book. I think I've read like 2 chapters. This quote specifically is, to be at home is to be known. And I was obviously not at home over in Europe. And so I think that's what was part of what was scary, is not physically being home, but then emotionally not being at home. I didn't really know anyone, and so I wasn't known. And since people didn't really know me, they couldn't really love me for who I was. I had to search for common ground and search for common interests and pursuits and values. And then once again, it's hard to truly care about someone that you don't know. And so when I got home in the United States, it was so good to be home. Home where I was known. Home where I knew I had friends and people that cared about me. Home where I knew that I could find common ground and common interests and pursuits and values with the people around me because we shared that home. We shared the area and the surrounding and the culture together. There was just, I don't know. And so when I read this quote tonight, while I was looking for a quote, it just felt right. To be at home is to be known. And so being home in the United States, being home in Arizona, is what I am so grateful for. And don't get me wrong, I really, 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 really enjoyed being over in Europe and getting to have that experience and getting to learn and grow and have a pivotal moment in my life where I have my life pre-going on this program and my life post-going this program. I'm once again very, very grateful, but I do want to add that it feels so nice to be home, to be known, to be loved, to be cared for, to share a sense of common ground with those around me. And I just want to close with that it is good to be home. So I hope you find where you can be at home, where you can be known and loved and cared for, because that is so important and so vital for our happiness and our success. So, there you go. At the end of the day, I think I got through everything. I definitely said this was going to be a short episode, and that did not work out at all. Here we are at 26 minutes so far. Obviously, I'm going to edit this, and it will be less than that. But for now, it says 26 minutes and 7 seconds. So, there you go. But for now, I keep saying that. I know I say the same things over and over and over again. It drives me crazy. Thank you so much for listening and putting up with me, honestly. Don't forget to embrace imperfection, find meaning, satisfaction, and joy from the journey. I'm Kyra, and this is Imperfectly Broken, the podcast.